Hi, this is Dan and Lexi from Dan Schultz Outdoors, reminding you, keep the adventures alive. Hey y'all, I'm Johnny.
And I'm Colleen. And we're the Keel Quest. And we want you to keep the adventures alive. Cheers!
Hey, this is Darren from Ride Paddle Repeat, encouraging you to keep the adventures alive.
This is David from Beachley Ironworks saying keep the adventures alive.
Hey, Kevin with an A here. Keep the adventure alive.
Hi, I'm Dan Mayotte. Keep the adventures alive.
Hi, I'm Kevin Callan, the Happy Camper. Remember, keep the adventures alive. Awesome!
Woo, buddy! Shug here! Keep the adventures alive. I am.
Ethan here, the Avid Outdoorsy Guy, reminding you to keep the adventures alive.
We're John and Aaron.
Keep the adventures alive.
Hey everyone, it's Callan from Lure of the North, and I encourage you to keep the adventures alive.
This is Sky North telling you, keep the adventures alive. And now on with the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of CANOEHOUND'S Outdoor Adventure Show, a show that brings you a lot closer to the great outdoors. My name is Dennis, also known as CanoeHound. And if you are new here, please be reminded that we are live here every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or Eastern Daylight Time as we are right now. And it's always a fun show. We come here to entertain you on Tuesday nights and maybe build your knowledge base a bit about the great outdoors and the backcountry. Just want to get started with a few announcements like I always do while the chat over there gets populated and all our regulars and all our newbies get into the thing. It's an interactive show, so by all means, please do put your questions over there if you have any questions for tonight's guests. By all means, we'd love to get them answered for you. Last week, if you missed last week's show, you missed a great show. We were joined by 5 of the 6 young fellas from the Canoe for COVID. These 6 young guys last summer undertook a 2,000-kilometer, 60-day journey across Ontario. They started in Armstrong, Ontario, finished in Ottawa. Their goal was to raise about $60,000, $1,000 a day for Canoe for COVID, right? Basically, they were raising money for Canada's food banks and for the communities of the Indigenous Society. And essentially, these guys, these 6 young guys, they finished the trip, and they raised over $80,000 in funds for these causes. Really, it was a really good show. We had a lot of fun. If you happen to miss the show, please, by all means, go back into the library, check out the show. They currently have their YouTube series on. I think they're on their 2nd episode right now. Give them a watch. Go to Canoe, number 4, COVID. That's the channel name, Canoe for COVID. And check out their series. You'll certainly be glad you did. such a great undertaking that these guys did. I can't commend them enough for 6 guys under 20 years old, right? Good stuff. Congratulations to last week's swag winner, Kim Peets. Your prize is in the mail. Thanks for getting back to me so quickly when I replied back to you. Member shout-outs, membership shout-outs. Every week I shout out to my solo tripper channel members. I just want to say thank you to Sty North, Kevin with an A, Jeremy Walla, Smoking Our Barbecue, and Pam Bookham for your support. And of course to all my channel members, no matter what membership level you've joined at. Thank you very much. Your support goes a long way to supporting the channel, helping keep the costs down for putting these live streams together for you. If you're looking to get more out of Canoe Hound Adventures, you might want to consider becoming a channel member. Right down around there, if you're on YouTube, you'll see a link that says join. Click on that at some point. You don't have to do it today, or you don't have to do it right now, obviously, because the show is on. But you know what? There's a few different packages on there. It gives you the ability to get additional perks with the channel. And just to let all my channel members know, I am setting up a live stream, members only live stream that we will probably get going either next week or the week after. So I just want to give you forewarning. You will get an email notification and a community tab notification as well with that. So we're going to make sure that you're all knowledgeable and know when it's going to be happening. Let's see here. What else have we got? Special thanks to my channel sponsors, those who to help give us some great prizes and swag and things like that to give away from time to time. First, we got our good friends over at Kid Products, makers of the Kid Twig Stove and Reflector Oven. If you haven't checked them all out already, you can check them out at www.kihdproducts.ca. Check out their full line of made in Canada products. You'll be glad you did. As usual, our good friends over at Backcountry Coffee Company. You always see me drinking their coffee for the first half of the show. New delivery, and it's a nice coffee too, a really nice one. So thanks to Kyle over at the backcountrycoffeeco.ca. It's yeah, just got to make sure it's .ca. And then, of course, our good friends over at Great Signs and Graphics, Algonquin Outfitters, Short Hills Beard Company, and Ursac USA. So thanks to them. Without your support, it makes it a lot easier for me to give swag away when I don't have to pay for it out of my own pocket, right? So that's good stuff. Thank you, guys and gals, all that are responsible for that. Once again, all their links can be found right down there in the description of the video, so be sure to check them out. 2 more things. If you have any hot topics or guests, make sure you drop me an email at canoehound@gmail.com, or you can visit our website at canoehoundadventures.com, and you can just send us through the form there. Let us know who you'd like to see on the show, or what topic you'd like to see us covered. We got a couple set up for the next 2 weeks. I will be announcing them during the week once we confirm things down a bit more. But yeah, so that's all good there too. So drop me an email. Let me know who you'd like to see on the show. I always love the suggestions, and it makes it a little easier when I can talk to an individual or something to say, hey, you know what? People want to see you on the show. So let's do that. Let's get your input. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, if you have any questions for our guest tonight, right over there in that chat, you could put the word question before your question. It makes it easier for me to notice, and then put your question in there. I'll try to get to them. If I don't, after the 8 o'clock hour, after we do our swag giveaway, we'll put the invite up, and you have the opportunity to come up and speak mano a mano with our guests. You know what I mean? If you have a question, a comment, something along that lines, keep the comments clean, keep the questions clean. This is a family show, right? So that's good stuff too. Okay, so before we get into tonight's guest of honor, I want to, we have somebody here just to give us some more information on the Paddle in the Park contest for those of you that might be wondering a little bit more about information on that. Sorry, I'm just trying to click the right button. There we go. That's gone. I just want to invite to the stream here. We got Preston Sear. He is heading up the Paddle in the Park contest this year, and he has a couple of updates for us. And you'll be getting a lot of these updates leading up until the end of the season here for Canoe Hounds Outdoor Adventure Show. So, Preston, welcome to the stream. How you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Hey, not a problem. So I guess we got some new news on the Paddle in the Park contest.
Yeah, so we're this is the off season, so we're getting ourselves organized. We're finding new sponsors. We're coming up with plans where we're going to hide paddles. fun ideas for mini contests and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, this week we started a little mini contest where we designed ourselves a brand new logo. And so we decided that we'd have like this at-home version of the Paddle in the Park contest where you'd have to go find something. So we decided on this new logo. So we're asking people to go to paddleintheparkcontest.ca and hunt around for that logo. It's sitting somewhere within the website, and you'll find a way to enter the contest. And we've got some prizes for those who find it. So we've got an early start to the contest.
That's awesome. So I just posted the link in the comments or in the chat for
Perfect.
anybody that does want to go over there and take advantage of that. But save the link, watch the show, and then go over and get involved in the contest. Yeah. So what else is coming down the pipe with Paddle in the Park? We have some sponsors. Any that we can mention at this point?
I don't know. We want to introduce the sponsors and really like bring them on board this year, and we've got potentially a couple of new paddle hiders. So we're going to be announcing those guys pretty soon. And I think people are going to be they're going to like who's hiding paddles this year. Very so yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, as per usual, we start July 1st is when the contest begins. We've got the paddle points contest going as well, but obviously the big draw is going out and finding those paddles. So hopefully within the next month we'll have some photos of those paddles, so that everybody can kind of drool over those and start to make plans as to where they think we're going to hide them.
And those Badger paddles are some beauties, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, I love them. I mean, Fiona and Mike are friends of mine. Love them to death. They're great people, but they make great paddles. So I mean, when I tell people about how go get yourself a Badger, I'm being very genuine. It's not just because they're friends of mine. They're great paddles. I love them.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Just once again, I'm just going to pop up the little logo thing that I had up here. So that's the logo in the white box that you're going to be looking for on the paddleintheparkcontest.ca website. Give you a chance to go through, and I guess on the website there, because it's still being updated, but it's a lot of information from the past year or the last contest, correct?
Yeah, there's going to be a new website coming up soon. So yeah,
excellent.
That's another thing too.
Excellent.
I got to get my lazy behind into finishing that.
That's all right. Awesome. So, and as you noticed, I seen the was it Killarney Outfitters logo in the bottom right corner of that?
Yeah. So Killarney Outfitters has been with us throughout the entirety of the contest, and they've always been great sponsors, and they gave us a lot of prizes. Some of them we kind of hold on to a little bit for like mini contests and stuff. Mm-hmm. So because last year we didn't have the contest because we assumed that everything would be locked down, we had a couple of prizes left over. So these we've got a buff, tarp, dry bag, and a Nalgene bottle, all supplied by Killarney Outfitters. So
awesome.
It's good stuff.
Some swag that everybody wouldn't mind in their backpack for sure.
Oh, yeah.
That's good stuff.
Well,
cool. So
I mean, they've been in my apartment this whole time. So, I mean, the temptation of me just taking them.
Good thing you're not in Sky, Preston. So you just got to blow the dust off them and put them into a box and ship them out to some lucky
That's
one,
right. That's right.
Excellent,
They'll have a little bit of Nancy's hair on them too, no doubt.
Oh, there you go. Nancy, for those of you that are not aware, is not his wife; it's his dog.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's not one of those shows.
Show. We got to remember family show. So we will keep everybody in the live stream posted weeks to come as to what's going on with the Paddle in the Park contest. Just so that you know, and as soon as we get a little bit of freedom here in Ontario, open up the floodgates because we're coming. Yes. We're coming. Yep. Yeah, good stuff.
Well, it's going to be a fun year.
Oh, let's hope so. Right, we're getting off to a slow start right now, but hopefully things will build up. So that's good stuff. Anything else you need to add to that, Preston?
No, just rewards are out there. Can't wait for you guys to see what we've got going on.
Once again, I'll just flash that up on there because the rewards are out there is the hashtag for that. So
that's right.
There you go. Keep that in mind, people. So that's paddleintheparkcontest.ca. Get on over there and find this logo for your chance to win. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. Good luck.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks for coming up. And I think it's time to get on to our other guest who's being so patient down there in the green room. So,
okay.
We'll catch you later, Preston. Thanks very much.
All right. We'll see you.
Awesome. There you go, guys and gals. So get yourselves all in tune with that. Just want to do a quick shout out to Graham Jordan. I seen that you joined as a channel member. Thank you very much for your support. It's greatly appreciated. I couldn't click it up on screen at the time because I actually had Preston on here. But thank you very much for your support. I'll need you to send me your email address or your mailing address so I can get out your package as a member. So you can send me an email at canoehound@gmail.com there, Graham, and we'll get you all set up with your membership. Awesome. Okay, so tonight I'm happy to be joined by this walking, talking encyclopedia of the backcountry camping and paddling. His knowledge base is like totally incredible when it comes down to it. He's an author of many educational books and publications. He's been presenter at almost every outdoor related show or symposium that has to do with backcountry camping and canoeing and stuff like that. You know what? He has many books that are out there. If you haven't seen one, then you should take your head out of the sand, right? Anyways, I'd like to welcome to the live stream tonight, Mr. Cliff Jacobson. How you doing, Cliff?
Hey, good to be with you, Dennis.
Same to you. It's an honor to have you on the show, and I know you're going to be sharing a lot of your knowledge with all the good folks that we have here in the chat tonight. We're almost at 100 people, so that's a very good showing.
All right.
Yeah. So, how you doing these days? What's going on during this pandemic era?
Hey, we're as locked down as you are. When you said open the floodgates, we're coming. I got to tell you, you open the floodgates, we are coming to Ontario.
Yes, sir. Yeah. One of your favorite places to paddle, right?
It is. Yeah. Canada, I've done a lot of rivers in Canada, and it's in my blood, and it's who I am, and it's largely made me who I am.
That's awesome.
Thanks. Wow. Thanks to all of you guys for letting me in so I can keep doing this.
Hey, you know what? We'd be silly not to let you in, man. Like I say, you're very renowned for what you do and the education that you spread in this sport that we all love so much, or this pastime that we all love so much. And believe me, it doesn't go unnoticed. By all means, your knowledge is very vast, and there's a select few of you out there that have the knowledge that you have. So it's greatly appreciated by all means.
Well, that's kind words.
So, but give us a bit of history on Cliff Jacobson. How did you get started in all this? I know it's a pretty stereotypical question, but how did you get this interest or this love for the backcountry?
Well, first of all, I think you're born with it. Seriously, for many years, I outfitted or guided canoe trips, in northern Canada and a couple in Alaska, and I worked with kids for a long time, taking kids on canoe trips. And I've had kids that have never been camping or canoeing in their entire life. You get them out there. They love every minute of it. It can be raining bloody murder. They're out there sitting on a rock getting soaking wet. They don't care. And I have other kids who, one bug in the sky, they hate it, or they miss their curling iron or their boyfriend or their girlfriend or whatever the case might be, and they hate it. So first of all, I think it's in the genes. And I really do. I think you can take hatred and turn it to tolerance. You can turn tolerance into like into love, but I don't think you can turn hatred into love. I know I have two daughters like that. One of them, she wouldn't walk 100 feet to go to a restaurant. She'll park, or she'll have her car valeted or whatever. And my other one does marathons. I mean, she's in incredible shape. She hates canoeing and camping, loves her daddy, but hates canoeing and camping. Mm-hmm. So, I started doing this when I was about 11 years old. I was a Boy Scout, and I don't know, it just got more and more and more and more to the point where I loved it so much that I remember vividly my dad telling me, son, You got to quit doing this stuff. It's okay that you can't make a living doing it. Well, he was right about that. You can't make a living doing it, but you can sure have a lot of fun along the way. So, it just happened. And I grew up in Chicago, for crying out loud.
Oh, really?
Probably 14 years old before I really saw any serious outdoor stuff. But I think it's in the genes.
It's funny you say that, because everybody has their own special interest or love, right? What appeases to one person might not appease another person, right? So it's you know what, I understand what you're saying about either you love it or you hate it. You get them people out there, and some are motel campers. Then there's us, right? So
yeah,
I think we're the ones with our heads screwed on straight, so that's a good thing. So, you remember your first experience in a canoe?
Well, I really don't remember my first experience in a canoe. That's probably too far back to run out. No, I spent summers at kind of a rustic scout camp in Michigan, and in those days, scout camps were pretty wild, compared to they are now. And we did a lot of serious hiking and a lot of kind of serious canoeing. But I don't remember how this all started, except it just became overwhelming to the point where I really wanted to pack up and live in the North Woods. And I, unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that, but I guess I kind of did it in different ways. And what I did was, when I was a kid, I read everything I could find on canoeing and camping. I mean, everything, going back hundreds of years, everything. And then what happened was I started doing it, and I started reading the more modern books. And I said, this isn't right. How much time have you spent in the bush? Because this isn't really how it is. And that's when I kind of got mad and said, I'm going to write an article about canoeing and camping. And then that's kind of like how it started.
Is that right? Right. Okay. And what was your favorite read? Is it like back in those days? Was that?
Oh, gee, I was a big fan of, I don't know how many readers ever read any books by Cornelius Osgood. He was a Canadian writer. He wrote about the Northwest Mounted Police. Many books he wrote. So I was into the West Mounted Police. I was into all those kind of books. Okay, and then of course I read the stories of all the great mountain men. From Kit Carson. All the way down. And it was like I lived in this world. And then I started canoeing and camping, and the more I did it, the more I learned, and the more I also learned in the process was so much of the advice that people get just isn't true. It's just not true. Because I think what people need to remember when they read when you read an article or you read a book about whatever it might be, the writer doesn't get paid by the time he spends. Okay, he gets paid a certain package amount of money for the finished product. So if he's going to field test the product, he's not going to spend hours and days field testing this product, because he's going to do it quickly. So most of the things that you read regarding field tested products, how they perform and so forth, you got to take them all with a grain of salt, because the only way to test products and see if things work is to spend a lot of time doing it. That means a lot of time in the bush, because things fail, and the longer you use them, the quicker they fail. And there are things you learn right off the bat, things that do fail immediately, like zippers that are too small, okay, which is most sleeping bags fall into that category right now.
Yeah.
Too small, and they jam up. But okay, I didn't mean to get off the subject. I'm sorry.
No. That's okay. We're going to get into some of that stuff in a little while anyways. I'm sure you come to expect that, right?
Yeah, you betcha.
Yeah. So you obviously have a thirst for knowledge, learning all this different stuff, and a lot of it's learned through books. A lot of it's learned through doing. What was the first book that you wrote? What was the reason? Like, why did you want to get into publishing your own book, or
I never thought I'd write a book. what I would do is I would read magazine articles. I remember I was reading magazine articles about some canoe trip somewhere, canoeing with Rob Roy or something like that. The guy recommended like a 15-foot aluminum canoe. And I was just so mad about it that my wife said, well, if you can do better, why don't you? And I said, by golly, I will. And so I wrote an article. And every time we did an article, it was kind of a little different slant because it didn't parrot all this other stuff. And then it just evolved after that. And I never planned on writing a book. And then one day, editor from E.P. Dutton Company contacted me and said, hey, you had a cover story, and I don't even remember what magazine it was in those days. Would you like to write a book on canoeing for us? And I went, a book? A whole book?
A whole book?
And my wife said, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. That's how it started.
Wow. And what was your first book?
The first book was Wilderness Canoeing and Camping. Wilderness Canoeing and Camping. And that thing evolved into many, many different editions over the years. And it just went out of print last year. It's been in print. Well, it was in print continually since 1977 when it was first print. So it's had a long life. But what's happening with all these books now, and people are probably noticing it, they're getting expensive to publish, and color especially. I mean, publishers are really wary about using color because it really kicks the price of the book up, and people basically, don't want to buy expensive books, and they think they can get all the information now off the internet. A lot of it is just plain wrong, but that's kind of the thinking now. So I don't know if there's going to continue to be markets for canoeing and camping books or not. Maybe there will be. Maybe people will just read the old ones. I don't know, but the internet has certainly changed. How people learn about the outdoors.
Right. So you might have just answered Canary Yellow Canoe's question here. Any plans for a sequel to that book then?
No, I'm done. I'm done writing. The last revision I did was Canoeing Wild Rivers. So it went from expedition canoeing to Canoeing Wild Rivers. And then I had a kind of a boring winter here in Wisconsin. It snowed and snowed and snowed. And you know what? I'm tired of seeing all these gray hairs in the wilderness. How do we get young people into the wilderness? So then I started thinking, I said, I could write a teen book about, how to canoe and camp it. Why? Kids who love this outdoor stuff, they're going to read about it. Okay. We have a lot of little books that we sell to the Boy Scouts and so forth. I said, but the problem is most kids don't like to read. Okay. They got their head stuck in their cell phone all day long. Okay. So I said, I think I'm going to try something different. I'm going to write a survival book, a book about a kid who's having problems in school. Okay. Plays on his cell phone all the time. And he's flunking out of school, and his grandpa is a big wilderness guru. And his grandpa makes a deal with the school and says, I'm going to take him on a 30-day canoe trip in Canada and straighten him out. Okay. And, he can keep a journal and take pictures and stuff. And if he does all that he's supposed to, teachers, they'll pass him in English and social studies. But then I said, that's going to be the hook to drag them in. But what it's really going to be is a how to canoe and camp book, because what happens is that grandfather gets separated from the kid. The kid has to find his way to his float plane pickup 200 miles away. He's only 13 years old and he runs track, so he thinks ain't no big deal. I can do 10, 15, 20 miles a day. Yeah, right. In the Saskatchewan bush, And but in the process along the way, he has to survive, and his grandfather has given him a book that contains everything he needs to know to survive, but he never read it, okay? Because he doesn't like to read, but now he's forced to. And that book is called Race to Survival, Justin Cody's Race to Survival. It's a teen book. It's my latest one, but it was a fun book because the fictional stuff except there's some fictional stuff that's maybe a little over the top, but everything that actually happens in the story actually did happen to me or friends of mine, people I know. So one of the things I learned about writing fiction, because I've never written fiction before, is fiction really is not fiction. It's really nonfiction placed out of, out of sync. In other words, all those things happen, but not at the time. But that's the last book now that I think that I've done. We're going to be Camping Top Secrets is in for revision. That'll come out next year. But that's it. I'm done. I do blogs every month on my website, and that's about it.
Right. I'm just going to share the screen here because this is from the email that you had sent me, and that's the cover of the book that you're speaking of. I actually had that in my list of questions here. I wanted to ask you about this most recent book of yours. When did this one come out, Cliff?
Actually, this thing came. This was kind of interesting. I wrote this 2.5 years ago. I queried like 40 publishers. I couldn't find a publisher for it. And it was interesting because, see, the book's half fiction and half nonfiction. So what's happened is the fiction publishers came back and said, no, we don't do nonfiction. And then the nonfiction publishers came back and said, no, we don't do fiction. It's a book out of the box. So I couldn't get anybody to read it. Okay. And so then, you know what I decided to do? I said, you know what? I'll put it on my website. I'll set it up myself. Like I really know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. But I said, if I'm going to give it away, I'm not going to spend any money on it. I'm just going to try to do it in Microsoft Word and throw some pictures in there and whatever. So I gave it away for about a year. And then one day my two daughters said, Dad, we're going to get this book fixed up for you. So they gave it to somebody who knew what he was doing. And then I actually had a viable thing. And I still couldn't find a publisher. And then one day I do these blogs. I said, if anybody knows, if there are any publishers out there interested in reading this book, please holler. I didn't expect anything. And then there's a little teeny company in Minnesota called 10,000 Lakes Press. Two young guys, like in their 20s, okay? One of them wrote a pretty popular book. Now, why all of a sudden it escapes out of my mind, but they actually duplicated Eric Severide and Walter Port's trip to Hudson Bay when they were 18 years old. It's really a great book. They liked it, and they produced it. And so that's how I finally got it published.
Awesome. That's incredible. So you and I were speaking, and you've published 17 different titles.
It depends how you count them.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe somewhere in there. I tried.
Well, new editions don't count, but it's basically 17 titles, right?
New editions, but it's somewhere in there, something like that.
Okay. Keep that in your mind, people. Keep that in your mind. So if somebody wanted to pick up a Cliff Jacobson book, what's there's many different ways people can get books out there. What's the best way that somebody can actually pick up a book where it benefits you the most?
Well, unfortunately, Canada does not have this does not have a media mail postage thing, which is sad. We have that in the US. What that means is I can take a book that's a $30 book like Canoeing Wild Rivers, which weighs 2.5 pounds roughly, and I can send it to Alaska for $3.50. If I send it to Ontario, it costs me $30 to mail it to Ontario. So I can't mail hard copies to Canada. I do on my website. Some of these books are ebooks, digital, and they can get them that way. Amazon has them as Kindle readers, okay? My website has them as PDFs, and people can buy them electronically. But as much as I would love to be able to mail books to Canada, it's just too expensive to do that because books just a lot of weight. So
whenever Kevin Callan's on the show or something, I always ask him that too, because I've always heard the stories of publishing books, and the publishers obviously make all the money, and then you, with all the knowledge base and all the work that you put into it, they throw you peanuts or cookie crumbs, right? But that's why I always like to know what's the best way, because do you have any books that are self-published besides the ebooks and stuff?
No, I would never self-publish. The problem with this is it's really not so much about the raves or the quality of the book. Like Justin Cody's Race to Survival, if you click it up, it's got 11 reviews. I think it's like a 4.8 or something out of 5 stars. I mean, in order to get people to read these books, you have to promote them. And authors don't have promotional money. And publishers used to have money for that. They used to send authors out on book fairs and all kinds of things, but they don't do that anymore. So basically, you either wind up, if you can have a bestseller, that's fine. You can make a fortune. I'm trying to remember who the writer's name was, who said you can make a fortune writing, but you can't make a living.
Right.
Pretty much sums it up.
Yeah. I remember an adage one time when I used to be into NASCAR racing, and the one car owner said, if you want to make a little money in NASCAR, you have to start with a lot of money. Right? So probably the same type of adage there, right? So which book of all your publications, which book are you most proud of?
Well, Canoeing Wild Rivers is my flagship book. I mean, I first wrote that in 1983. It's been in continuous print, and it's gone through a number of revisions. It started as Canoeing Wild Rivers, went through a couple of editions of Expedition Canoeing, back to Canoeing Wild Rivers. I'm particularly proud of that one for a lot of reasons. First of all, there's no other book like it. I mean, when you write a canoeing book or a kayaking book, the problem an author has is you got so much space, okay? So if you use some of that space to tell people how to paddle the canoe, you've taken half the book. Now you got this much space for nuts and bolts. So with Canoeing Wild Rivers and the ones that came before it, I decided I'm not going to do that. There's plenty of books out there that teach people how to paddle. What I'm going to do is give people information that they can only get by belonging to canoe clubs, rubbing shoulders with the top paddlers in the world. And I might say that 35, if I counted right, 35 other authors in Canoeing Wild Rivers. Mm-hmm. And they're all Canadian. Okay, so I've got 35 of the top people in North America, or 35 of the top Canadians. And I mean, if I started rattling off their names, you know exactly who they are. From Kevin Callan, Gary and Joni McGuffin. I mean, the list goes on. So it's not just a Cliff book. It's everybody who knows what they're doing out there has input in this thing. So what you get is a really realistic look at what happens when you decide you want to go canoe one of these tough, mean northern rivers. Because let's face it, you got to have the skills to do that. And skills mean much more than paddling. Skills mean judgment. Because, I mean, you can be the best paddler in the world. If you make a judgment error, they're going to bring you home in a body bag. So
that's not a good thing.
Yeah. So Canoeing Wild Rivers, that's my top.
That's your baby, huh? Yeah, it's hard to choose when it comes to 17 publications, right? But
the story that goes with that book that I think is interesting. Okay, before we retitled it Canoeing Wild Rivers, it was entitled Expedition Canoeing. Okay, and it was a big book too, and it was in black and white. It had 100 and 200 black and white photos in it, whatever. Publisher contacted me and said, Cliff, we checked around. We said, everybody tells us this was the top book on the subject. We'd like you to do a revision. I said, yeah, but I want it in color. No. We can't do it in color. We can't do it. So I said, well, then, you know what? Kill it. Because it's been around for 25 years. Nobody wants black and white anymore. So kill it. So the phone rang off, and then about a week later, I get this call and said, hey, we'll make a deal with you. If we'll do the book in color, if you will accept a 50% cut in your royalties. I said, I got to think about this. So I thought about it for about a week, and then I said, you know what? It's my heartbeat. It's my love. Yeah, and you never, maybe the top hook on the subject, but still, you don't make much money out of these things. If you make, quite honestly, and Kevin will tell you the same, if you can make $1,000 a year out of a book like that, that's pretty good. Okay, so usually don't make that much. Usually it's in the 500, 600, something like that. You might make 1,000, 2,000 the first flush of sales the first year, but after that, so I went and did it, and I'm glad I did it. I didn't do it for the money. I did it because it was my heartbeat. But hey, I'm not complaining. It's just the realities of the game. It's the same thing in music. It's the same thing in any artistic endeavor. That's it.
Yeah, it's when they pick up the movie rights where you actually make money, right? You got to be like a Harry Potter writer type of thing, right?
Yeah. I probably shouldn't say anything, but my daughter writes screenplays, and she's a pretty successful little writer. She's got a movie being filmed in Europe in the fall about Elizabeth Bathory, this was in the 15th century, I think. She was like one of the worst serial killers of all time. But anyway, she does comedy. She does all sorts of things. And they're working on trying to see if they can get this book made into a TV series. And,
incredible. That's great. Well, wish her hopefully some great success with that. You all heard it here first, but it stays here. I don't know if Cliff was supposed to say that. Cliff, what are you drinking tonight? You got anything on the go?
Actually, I do.
I'm running out of coffee. You're going to be cracking a beer anytime now.
If Kevin Callan was here, I could give him a sip of this. This is good single malt Scotch, Kevin. Okay. And whenever we're together, and I really missed getting together with Kevin this year. I always bring a bottle of good single malt. And then we solve all the world's problems, just he and I. It's amazing. They should just hire us.
Yeah. Well, you never know. He might pop in during the second half of the show. Like I said, I know he's on another live stream tonight with a little Q&A going on there. I'll mention that towards the end of the show if anybody wants to go over and check it out. But yeah, so you never know. He might pop in. He usually pops in for a little hello here and there, so that's a good thing. So this whole COVID pandemic has been really wreaking havoc on everybody. As you mentioned, just like yourself in the States. What are you actually doing these days to try and keep busy? What's on the agenda on a daily basis?
I'm still canoeing, and I'm still canoeing and camping. Actually, we just got back from the Buffalo River in Arkansas. I've done the Buffalo 4 times, and next fall we're going to do the lower canyons of the Rio Grande again. And I would say to every one of your followers here, Canada's got some of my most favorite rivers of all time. I mean, people who read my books know that my wife, Sue Herrings, and I, we were married on a Canadian river. We were married on the Hood River at Wilberforce Falls, north of the Arctic Circle. But you know what? The U.S. has got some interesting rivers too. And my favorite is the Rio Grande on the Mexico-Texas border. It's phenomenal. And I would rate it up there with some of my favorite Canadian rivers. You're going through canyons that are thousands of feet high. If you crash and burn, it's probably a 60-mile or more walk out. And when you're walking out, everything you're walking through cuts, burns, or bites, and there's no water. So it's a lot like being on a Canadian river where, help is an airplane ride away. And I would encourage Canadians who love to canoe. You got to be a decent whitewater paddler, though. People think the Rio Grande, they've seen too many John Wayne movies. I'm going to walk across the Rio Grande. The Rio Grande's it's a mountain river, and it drops. And when the water's high, that baby's going to be class 3+.
Right.
Parts of it. And so, you need to know when to do it, whatever. But the camping is superb. There's no bugs. And it hardly ever rains. It's wonderful. And, it's a little off the subject, but, I said I did the Buffalo River 4 times. And this last trip, we had kind of an interesting problem. And I want to share this with people because what happens is in our canoeing fraternity, if you will, there are people who say, I'm a whitewater paddler. And then we have people who say, oh no, I would never, I don't do rapids, okay? I go to boundary waters, I go to Quetico. And I would say to them, you know what? It's important to be able to do rapids because you don't know when you're going to need it. And the case in point is our recent trip on the Buffalo River. When we arrived down in Arkansas, they had closed the river because it was too hot. So we waited around for a day, and the next day they let us on the river. We had to start 2 miles below the major rapid section at Ponca because it was still too hot. Okay, so really wasn't much of a problem getting all the way down near the end. I mean, the people who do the Buffalo, these are people who, they're rental canoes, they're in these little goofy kayaks, you know, plastic things and so forth. Okay, but then what happened was, in order to get to our takeout point, the Buffalo River runs into the White River. The White River is running this way, and you have to go upstream a bit, and you have to cross. It's roughly, I would say, 150, maybe close to 200 yards wide. And then you have to go upstream a little bit because that's where our takeout was. Well, when we arrived at this thing, evidently they'd opened the dam on the White River. Current speed was running, I would guess, 8 miles an hour.
Wow.
We're in solo canoes. You got one person running, okay? And there's debris everywhere, floating down the river, uprooted trees, all sorts of things. And we had to cross this river. It was the toughest ferry I've ever done in my life. And at one point, I managed to get behind some debris, hoping there would be a bit of an eddy there that I could use. No, it was just kept pushing me back and pushing me back. More debris behind me. And you had to have your angle exactly right. If your angle wasn't exactly right, you're going to crash and burn. Needless to say, we all made it. But I bring up this scenario because, you know, if you don't have practice skills, even if maybe you don't like to paddle rapids, maybe you don't want to paddle rapids, but if you paddle long enough and you go down some rivers or something with some friends, you could hit a situation where knowing what to do and having the skill to do it will save your life. And in this case, a forward ferry and being able to hold that angle in an 8 mile an hour current with debris everywhere and waves all around you was critical.
Yep. Yeah, that's a skill set you should know, right? Yeah. Wow. So, but y'all obviously made it through this safely because obviously you're here, right? How long was that trip? How long were you gone for?
I think we were on that river 10 days.
10 days, eh? Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
So,
but by the way, before we leave that, I would say, you know, much as I love Ontario, you ain't canoeing there in January, February, March. Okay, come on down to the States. Check out some of our rivers down here. You'd be surprised. There's some fun ones.
Yeah. We got a question here from somebody in the chat is asking, what kind of canoe and paddle do you prefer for solo?
Well, I have 3 solo canoes. They're all North Star canoes. I have 2 North Star Yellowstone solos. One is a black and gold, 14. It's a 14-footer, and it weighs 35 pounds. I have an ultra lightweight, same boat that weighs 26. And the boat that I use basically for whitewater, tripping, things like that is a Phoenix. And the Phoenix is made out of this Negra stuff, whatever it is. It's a little on the heavy side. It weighs 43 pounds. It's a 14.5-footer. But I've used that in some pretty good sized stuff. When we did the Yellowstone River in that a few years ago, and we were running waves. We were running 3 foot standing waves in that boat. We did have spray covers. We would have never made it without the spray covers, but we were running very, very big stuff. And so, yeah, I love solo canoes. Paddles, don't hate me, fellow Canadian paddlers. I don't like wooden paddles. I like carbon fiber paddles. I have several, but I use a 54-inch, 12-degree Zavril carbon bent shaft for making time and basically doing everything except running rapids. And then I have a 57-inch straight or spoon paddle designed by Harold Eel. It's a carbon paddle too, but it's a whitewater carbon paddle. The carbon paddles are just so much lighter, and not only are they lighter, but they're perfectly balanced. I mean, like if you know anything about freestyle canoeing, that's like ballet on a pond.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these guys and gals, they'll put lead slugs in the grip of the paddle so that paddle can be balanced perfectly. Okay, adds a little bit of weight, but it changes the balance. So when you make good paddles, you don't have as much control over the balance. So with a carbon blade, you get very, very thin entries, which is very, very quiet. You don't have any noisy splines on either side. Okay, and Kevin Callan and I, we go back and forth on this thing all the time about paddles.
Yeah.
Kevin likes his beaver tail paddles. I started out with a beaver tail, and but he doesn't like bent shafts. And he tells me, well, I don't want to be going this, and then this, and then this. I said, Kevin, you don't have to switch sides every 3 strokes. You don't. I said, the problem of people when they buy these bent paddles, they buy these paddles they have these formulas for how to determine paddle. Oh, sit on a stool, measure from your, it's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. It ain't rocket science, okay? It's really simple. If you want more control, okay, and power, you want some additional length. If you want less control and power, shorten it up. If you're going to be sitting low in a racing canoe, 5 inches off the water, you want a little paddle that's 50 inches long that you go bang, 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 bang. You're going in a straight line, making turns that are like this. But can you thread your way down a beaver stream with that?
No.
Now, if you increase the length of the paddle, make it a little longer. For example, I use a 54-inch bent shaft, 12-degree bent shaft, but a 56 or 57 straight for rapids. But with a bent shaft, it's actually easier to keep the canoe going in a straight line than it is with a straight paddle. Oh, horrors, people are saying. No, and I'll tell you why. You just pick up a bent paddle and you try it, and a straight paddle, and try this sometime. Take the straight paddle, run straight down like you're paddling alongside of the canoe, and then do that twist at the end that converts it to a pitch stroke, okay? A pitch stroke or a J if you want to spin it around, okay?
Yeah.
And you notice as close as you can get this thing to the canoe is the junction between the shaft and the blade. Then you're hitting the boat. Now, make it a bent paddle where it's out a little bit like this. When you turn that paddle, that blade actually runs a little bit under the canoe. In other words, it runs a little closer to the keel line than a straight paddle because of that 12-degree bend. Yeah. What that means is you get more power to the forward part of it, okay? Well, it's less effort keeping it straight, keeping the boat straight, simply because the paddle runs closer to the keel line of the canoe. Now, people who are shaking their heads and they're saying, no, 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 I've tried it and it doesn't work. I would submit to you 2 problems you have. One, your paddle is probably too short. You're probably buying into this formula stuff. Okay, and you can't formula outfit somebody with a paddle. Why? Because, okay, you're sitting on a seat. Oh, that's supposed to be the height of your seat in the canoe. Well, first of all, it's not the height of your seat in your canoe. The minute you throw a pack in the canoe goes deeper in the water. The minute you out, the canoe goes higher in the water. So what do you want? A telescoping paddle to adjust for as the canoe goes up and down? No, we'll cut through this nonsense and don't take this stuff too seriously. And I would say, if you want to paddle a canoe straight with less effort, try a little longer bent shaft, but go with a 12-degree, not a 14. 14 is a little bit severe. And I would say, I know Canadians love their beaver tail wooden paddles, but look around at what your fellow racers are using. You won't see a beaver tail in the bunch. They're all using carbon bend shafts. Believe me, if a wooden paddle is better, if a beaver tail was better, that's what they'd be using. Now, I will dequalify this by saying, if you're paddling a classic wood canvas canoe with a carbon fiber bent blade, it's just horrors, okay? You got to be true to the game too, okay? So there are certain canoes that you're going to paddle that you need to have a traditional style paddle. Sorry, I didn't need to go on a rant here.
No, you know what? It just makes me. That's why I wanted to have you on the show, because you've got a lot of knowledge on this stuff, right? Where do you learn that? Is this just through experience over the years, or where do you pick up that knowledge from?
I guess first of all, like I said, you read everything in print.
Yeah.
Then you talk to people who do this day in and day out, all day, for days or weeks. You see what they're using. You look and you see what the racers use. The racers, they want to expend as little energy as possible to get from one point to another. So they pick the boat that does it best, and they pick the paddles that do it best. Now, this doesn't mean you have to subscribe to that. Any canoe trip you go on, you need two paddles. Anyway, you want one for making time, and you want one for rapids. The first trip I did in a solo canoe was in, 1974. We canoed the Steel River in Ontario. And that was before they had any signs up or had anything. It was seat of your pants. Kevin Callan did it, and he was shaking his head. He couldn't find this, Yeah, that's how it was then, okay? And I was paddling a 15-foot wood strip solo canoe, and I had two paddles. One was at that time, state-of-the-art racing paddle, which was a straight, sort of squarish paddle made by Buzzy Peterson, who was a Minnesota racer at the time. And the other was a 60-inch ash beaver tail. And whenever I'd get in the rapids, that big 60-inch paddle, when you did a bow draw with that thing, that'd spin that boat right around. When you did a cross draw, wham, it would spin it around. And it turned out the old Red Cross canoeing manual, which said, remember they used to say something like, bow paddle comes to your nose and the stern paddle comes to the top of your, well, okay, that's a little bit too long. But the point was, with that long paddle, I could spin that canoe and I would miss the rocks. With the shorter paddle, I couldn't. And then I returned from that trip, and I had, wasn't the carpal tunnel? I don't know what it was. All I know is my hand fell asleep. My fingers would be like this, and I couldn't grip the paddle, and I was rushed for a whole day. And I said, you know what? I can't keep paddling with this solo C stroke where this is constantly going down, down, down like this. And that's when Mike Chickanowski, who owns Winona Canoes, gave me a 12-degree carbon fiber paddle. And his words were, Cliff, I got to drag you kicking and screaming in the 20th century. And I never looked back. So I owe that to Mike.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, you know what? But ultimately, when it comes down to it, right, it comes down to a paddler's comfort too. Hey, it's a matter of preference and taste, right? So, but some things are better than others. And yeah, you know what? That's always been an age-long debate, how to properly size the paddle, right? So, yeah. I guess you shed a little light on that. Had somebody
sport. It's a sport. Do what pleases you.
Exactly. Drink the kind of beer that you like.
I would add too is, you know what? Canoeing it's a magical sport, in that it keeps us in touch with history. And I gotta have something in my canoe that reminds me of that. For some people, it's a beautiful wooden paddle. Great. For other people, it's a canvas pack. Great. But I have to have something in my boat that feels and smells like history. I don't know if it makes any sense, but.
Yep. Yeah. And what's yours?
I have I've used canvas packs for years and years, and I still like them. And do we have time for a little dissertation on why canvas packs shouldn't die? Or
we have until 9 o'clock tonight, so have at it.
Here's an interesting observation. Okay, you go out and you buy, and believe me, I have a lot of. I'm not advocating one over there. I just wanted to share, okay, the differences. You go out and you buy the latest nylon portage pack. Okay, it's all coated on the inside, closes up tight. It's waterproof, right? No, of course it's not. It's a water can just get in through the flaps and so forth, can get in through the seams and so forth. All right, so we know that. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a plastic bag inside of that, a big plastic bag. Maybe we'll even put 2 in there, whatever. Okay, right next to this, now we have a canvas pack. Okay, same deal. If you submerge that in the water, water's coming right through the canvas. Okay, now we're going to put a plastic bag in each of them. And let's seal up the plastic bag until it's both packs are completely watertight. All right, partway through this trip, there's a capsize. Both packs go in the water. We're going to take them out. Now let's see what happens. We set the canvas pack on a rock, and pretty soon we notice all the water is draining out through the sides of the pack and the seams and so forth. We'll leave it in the sun a while. Everything will dry out.
Mm-hmm.
The nylon pack's not doing that. What we got to do now with the nylon pack is we need to open it up and we need to turn it upside down. Because the water's trapped between the plastic bag and the waterproof pack fabric, okay? And then after we've done that, we actually now have to completely unpack the pack, take the entire plastic bag out, turn the pack inside out so the inside of that will dry, okay? Now, so I just bring this up because people are fond of saying, oh, that's old hat, that's stupid, why would anybody use an old-fashioned Duluth pack or Woods pack anymore? Okay, that's why, because maybe they know something you don't know. And the other thing I would also add is that when you buy a pack, a backpacker only needs 1 pack, okay? If he spends $500 on it, fine, only needs 1. But canoeist, you need 3 minimum for trips of a week or so. And if you're going to do one of these Arctic rivers in Canada where you're going to be gone a month, you may need 5. Now, do you really want to spend $500 a pack? You want to buy $2,500 worth of pack? Oh, get some super fancy suspension system? The answer is you don't have to. All you have to do is do what Canadians who have tripped their whole life have known: use a tump line. Now, if I say this to Americans, they shake their head and they come up with some disease or cracked, broken neck or something you're going to get because the tump line's going to push your head back and break your neck. Okay? Yeah. The problem with most of the Americans I meet who are on the canoe trails who badmouth the tump line is because it's not adjusted properly. And they're like the 8th graders I used to teach. If they don't get it instantly, they don't want to learn it. That the tump line does not go here and knock your head back. It goes up here and pushes almost straight down. So, but these are things that you learn, over the years. And if you embrace a tump line, it doesn't matter what your pack is. You're not using the suspension system. You can put a duffel bag on there and it'll carry just as well as any other pack. But you have to learn how to adjust the tump line properly, and a 1/2 inch either way makes a difference. So you can't just say, "Hey, John, carry my pack for me." No, he might have to readjust the tump line. That takes a little patience. Some people don't.
My biggest worry with a tump line, I'll be honest, losing what little I have left up there.
Well, you brought that up because, one pack maker years ago made the tump strap out of a fleece. He had a nylon strap running through it with fleece on, and that was really nice. That was really good until these guys started going through the woods and setting the pack down, and then that fleece picked up everything that was on the ground, But,
yeah, oh, that's awesome. Yeah, my pack has a tump line on it. I've got an old Ostrom pack, and I've never used it. I you know what? I should carry it in case if I ever broke my shoulder strap or something, right? Because that'd be good. That's a good backup to have for it. But yeah.
Well, look at it this way. The voyageurs carried billions of pounds of trade goods across the continent with a tump line.
Yeah.
If hip belts worked, you don't think they'd have them on those packs? If shoulder straps were better, don't you think they'd have them on those straps? Go take a trip in the Himalayas and see what the porters do. They take all your gear and they throw it into a wicker basket on a tump line, and they literally run up the hill. Oh, yeah, while wearing sandals, by the way, not 5-pound mountaineering boots. Okay. These are not stupid people. Every primitive culture in the world, people carry stuff on their heads. What? African women carry what? 30, 40% of their 50% of their body weight on their heads by balance. So this is really very strong. The problem is we have set in our mind that, because it's new, it's better. You know what? To be honest with you, I think some of the best equipment for camping, not so much for canoeing, was years ago. I don't think the stuff is that good anymore. For example, how many of you remember the old Optimus 111B stove, the Phoebus 625, okay? Back in the days when stoves were self-contained. Oh, now we have 2 parts we get to put together. Oh, look at the weight. You haven't saved any weight. You still got the tank. You got to hook up the tank. Oh, and guess what? You hook it up enough times, and that little ball valve is going to fail. And then you're going to have flame up to here. There's only one reason why they went to these put-together stoves, so that some manufacturer could say, my stove's lighter than your stove. My stove only weighs 6 ounces. Yeah, but you got to have a tank for it. Oh, we didn't include that way. It's marketing. It's a marketing gimmick.
Yeah.
These new stoves aren't better. They're worse. And now everybody's using butane. I think butane's fine if you're going 3 days or 4 days, but you want to pay $5 or $6 for a little butane canister that runs about 45 minutes. And if the wind is blowing really hard, it won't run that long. Do it, I guess.
Yeah. That personally, I don't use those things because I just don't like the wasteful tank. Right. Yeah. It's one of those things. Yeah. So you know what? I know you've got a lot of pet peeves when it comes to canoeing and things being done inconsistently or being done wrong. Right. I want to get into that there a bit right after I do my swag giveaway. Right now, we're at the 8:00 hour. And then at that point, also, we will also invite some people onto panel tonight to ask a couple questions. I'm just going to really quickly post a quick link in the chat to anybody that might want to come up and ask Cliff a question or, pass on a comment or something. So, Cliff, I'm just going to do my swag giveaway really quickly, and then we're going to get right back into this because we got a lot more stuff to touch on here. Okay. All right. I'm just going to put you in the base. Great chance to do a quick pit stop or refill or whatever you want to do. So I'm just going to drop you in the base and I'll bring you right back up. Wow, this is awesome, man. I can't believe Cliff is actually sharing all kinds of great knowledge with us. Great to have him on as a guest. So tonight's swag giveaway, just going to be doing a common thing because I'm getting a couple super chats coming in tonight and some super stickers. I'm going to double up the pot tonight. I'm going to be giving away to 2 lucky winners this week. We're going to be doing, of course, our regular Canoe Hound Adventures and Canoe Hound's Outdoor Adventure Show patches, as well as some decals. And just to let you know, I'm also going to be throwing in a new reflective decal that will be off the press, I believe, tomorrow. So that's something that's great to put on your food barrel if you're a hanger. I will be talking to Cliff about that there, about hanging food barrels and stuff like that. But if you are a hanger, the reflective decals will go really good on that. I'll also throw in a couple decals and coupon from Algonquin Outfitters. Something that they've given to us to give away. So tonight's question is, and we touched on this a little earlier in the show, was how many books or titles has Cliff Jacobson published to date? Okay, so you don't have to get into multiple editions, but how many books or titles has Cliff Jacobson published to date? Please do not put the answer in the chat over there. I just put across the bottom of the screen there. You could send your answers to coasprize@gmail.com by Saturday at 11 p.m. At that time, I will do a drawing and I will contact the winner by email to get your mailing address, and we will definitely get your prize out to you as soon as possible after that. So how many books, titles has Cliff Jacobson published to date? There's the email address on the bottom. And without further ado, let's get Cliff back up here because we got a lot more that we can cover. Hey, welcome back. Long time no see. So we touched on touching on a few, and I don't know if that's the right thing to call it. I hope it doesn't offend, but pet peeves, right? What are some of your pet peeves when it comes to backcountry camping, canoeing?
To answer your question, let me first preface something.
Sure.
The couple of things that if you readers go on to Amazon.com and they type in my book, Canoeing and Camping Beyond the Basics, that thing has something like, I don't know, 40, 50 reviews on it. And they're all excellent except for one, which is a 1-star review. And it says, I would have given this book no stars, okay? But 1 is as low as it goes. This guy's nuts. And I'll tell you what it's about. It's about a few things that I refuse to give in on. Let's start out with number 1, the ground cloth inside the tent. This is hashed over and hashed over. But first of all, let me tell you the history of tent floors, because maybe people don't know what the history is. It goes something like this. When I was a kid and a Boy Scout, tents didn't have floors. They were canvas tents, okay? So what we had was ponchos. And you'd wear the poncho for rain, and then you'd put it down in the inside of the tent, okay, and put your sleeping bag and so forth on top of that. But the problem was not getting wet in the tent. The problem was pitching the tent, because since there was no floor to hold its geometry, it sort of switched around like this. These were rectangular floor designs. So a clever man, if you were a first-class scout and knew what you were doing, you could look at the tent and you could go, stake, 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 and you would get it almost perfect the first time. But more often than not, once you got it up, you'd have to take one out and move it, take one out and move it until you got it exactly perfectly rectangular. So then one day a clever manufacturer came along and said, people are having trouble setting up tents. Okay, why don't we just put a floor in it? That'll set the floor geometry. And that's what they did. And then what happened was people thought they don't need to put anything in their tent, to keep water out, because they got the floor. Okay? The truth is, if I were to, people who want to put a ground cloth under the tent, if I ask them this, if I said, would you pitch your tent on a slab of concrete? Of course not. When you pitch it on a plastic sheet, that's the same thing as pitching it on a slab of concrete. Why? Because the plastic is impervious to water. It's a non-woven material. Your tent floor, the coating on the inside, this Kenyan K-coat or whatever they're using, is on the inside. And it's a very thin, micro-thin little coating. And that coating will generally take somewhere around 100 pounds per square inch of water pressure. The plastic underneath will probably take twice that. The point is if water gets trapped between the plastic sheet and the floor, molecules are going to go from their greatest concentration to lesser concentration. You'll learn that in biology. They're going to go pressure ripped right into the tent. And but people say, well, I've camped for years and years, and I always have a ground cloth under my tent, and I've never gotten wet. And I would say to you, fine. It's sort of like a race car story. Like, okay, what happens is you just got out your nice new Buick, and you're driving down the road with your friend who's a NASCAR race driver. And you come to a curve. And you're going a little bit fast, so you hit the brakes in the middle of the curve. And the race car driver says, John, you don't hit your brakes in the middle of a curve, Well, what do you mean? I've been doing that for 40 years. I've never had a problem. And the race car driver, he's your friend, so he's not going to say anything. He's just going to say, yeah, well, just try it at twice the speed and see what happens. And that's what happens when guys like me do all these northern trips in Canada, and we get into blizzards and we get into high winds, and we have to pitch our tent sometimes in a swamp, literally in a swamp, because that's where the float plane let us off. And the float plane can't come back because now it's raining bloody murder and the waves are 3 foot high and he won't see you till tomorrow. So now you're going to pitch the tent in a swamp. We've done this on 2 occasions on the North Knife River in Manitoba with plastic ground cloths inside the tent so that they run up the side walls of the tent a foot all the way around. Any water you get in your tent, and you will get the water in your tent, will be trapped between the floor and the plastic, and you'll stay dry. But if you've never done anything like this, if when the weather gets bad, you get in your Volvo and drive home, okay, then you just haven't had the experience, which is why we do things a certain way. And it's the same thing with this thing, putting putting packs up in a tree. Like what? Bears don't climb trees?
I know, right?
They climb, not only do they climb very, very well. In fact, in Smoky Mountains National Park down in Tennessee, they overwinter in trees. They make nests in trees and overwinter in the trees. So what we have is a huge disconnect with a number of things. And in many cases, it's driven by, with due respect, federal authorities. See, federal authorities don't care if a bear gets your food, wrecks your tent, okay, wrecks your car, or whatever. But they do care if one gets you. So what you do is you apply a simple solution to a complex problem. People here, people there. You can't just say here and there because there's a lot of stupid people out there. You have to tell them what they have to do with their food. Okay, they got to put it in a tree. Well, not any tree will work, so now it's got to be so high. Oh, and the branches got to be so far out. Yeah, well, they got a lot of trees like that in Ontario that meet those regulations, right? Uh-huh.
No, not quite.
So those are really 2 of my most pet peeves that I catch a huge amount of heat on all the time from people. But I'm going to stick to it because what I'm saying is born from experience. We got dropped off in a swamp. We were there for 2 days. I remember standing outside my tent and water going over my foot and then stopped. When we got in the tent, it was a water bed. There was water literally going through the tent. But everybody was dry because of that ground sheet. So those are my 2 years.
I love those bits of information. And you know what? There's been many people in the chat saying many are saying inside the tent. So just like you, we got a couple people in the basement here. I'd like to get up. I know one here is on a bit of a time constraint. Yeah. So let's quickly introduce this fella. This is something I do every week for this guy.
Hi, I'm Kevin Callan, the Happy Camper.
Woo! Yes, I'm apostle number 14. Well, if you visited me instead, you would have been fine. It's one sexy beast, I'm telling you. You know, I called you poopy pants. Sorry about that.
Did you really?
I will hold in my urine for you, Dennis.
You have to remind Kevin that this is a family show.
What about the chipmunks?
Awesome.
Hey, here we go. We got Kevin Callan in the house. How you doing, Kevin? There's somebody else in the basement that really got a chuckle out of that.
Look at that.
Oh, Belvy. Hey, he's come up in the world, Belvy.
Here you go.
All right.
You guys drink your scotch. I'm just going to have a juicy ass.
Dan, my friend. I missed not seeing you this year, buddy.
I know. The whole thing, like really, like and yeah, it's really weird. Yeah. But I'm going back and forth. I'm doing a bunch of media tonight. I'm on some rock stations. I'm doing a podcast in Quebec, whatever. And all of a sudden, no, I'm missing Cliff.
Yeah.
And, you can hold a crowd, man. You can hold the stage.
You can too. Yeah.
So the one question is, could you tell everybody the time when you and I were on stage together at Canoecopia? Like over 800 people were in the audience.
They called the fire marshal.
Yes, yeah. And we debated over camping stuff. Yeah. And we wore boxing outfits.
Hey, here's the deal. If we're still alive, if I'm still alive, okay, and they do a live deal next year, maybe we should do something like that again.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was a good.
It was so. And I don't know who made the boxing outfits for us, but it was hilarious.
You still have your robe?
I do. I do.
Kevin, was that the clip that you had at the end of your fireside chat with Cliff?
Some guy made us a couple robes, like boxing things, boxing robes. It was fun. We had 500 people in that room.
Oh yeah. Oh my Lord. If we just can get along, that's all I'm saying, Cliff. We just get along.
It's funny, if you guys ever heard this, Kevin Callan or Cliff is the Kevin Callan of the South, and Kevin Callan is the Cliff Jacobson of the North.
I disagree with that because Cliff is Cliff, to be quite honest. And actually, I learned probably a lot. If you think about it, by my mid-20s, I had gone on several northern trips by reading your book, Cliff, the Expedition River book, and Bill Mason, right? So I wouldn't compare myself with that. I mean, I look up to what you did. And actually, I was putting my tarp inside of my tent the moment I read your book.
And you know what? I read your latest book, and I said, he's putting it inside the tent. All right. Yeah. He's a believer.
Yeah, it wasn't something that I thought of. It was something I read about yours. I mean, and you and I disagree with the hanging the food bag, and I think that's a regional thing. I mean, in Algonquin, if I told the whole audience to do what you did, they all die.
Well, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the same thing in the States. In the boundary waters, if a ranger comes in and they check a permit at a campsite and they see food pack sitting on the ground, that's the first thing they're going to say. Hey, you're going to put that up in that tree at night. I actually had a guy tell me that a couple of rangers came in, saw the food pack on there, and said, "You're going to put that on that tree at night." He said, "I made a big mistake." I said, "There's this guy, Cliff Jacobson, who says," and then the guy went into this dissertation about, "Don't you believe him? We'll put that thing up in that tree." Oh, yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, the regret is that we haven't paddled together.
Yeah. Can you tell the story to everybody here? Because a lot of Canadians don't know this story. In the U.S. shows, wherever they know the story, but when you got married on the Hood River, and Michael Peake actually had to deliver the wedding dress.
Oh yeah, that's in Canoeing Wild Rivers. When we Susie and I got married at Wilberforce Falls on the Hood River. It's the highest falls north of the Arctic Circle. Drops 160 feet through a 3-mile canyon. By comparison, I think U.S. Niagara drops, was it 167 or something like that. But anyway, she had her wedding dress and everything, and some schnapps and stuff in a pack. It was a white pack, and it got left behind at the loading dock, Air Tindy's loading dock in Yellowknife. She wouldn't get married then. She says, "That's it, wedding's off." But Susie, and then the guy started getting kind of whacked out. Like, we'll make you a wedding dress from poly bags, okay? Stuff like that, But what happened was Michael and Jeff Peake, they were there. They were flying out to some other river. I don't remember which one it was. And so they talked Air Tindy into putting it aboard a Twin Otter bound for Cambridge Bay and sort of flying the Hood on the way back or the way up or whatever and dropping this thing off. And so we're in camp that night. We got a half a dozen orange and red and orange tents out there. We got 5 red canoes belly up, and Susie's just not a happy camper. And all of a sudden we hear, "Yeah!" And it comes, and I had a little VHF radio. Tindy, Twin Otter, this is the Cliff Jacobson party. And all of a sudden the side door open, and this guy threw this pack out the side. And I guess can be dangerous. If you don't know what you're doing, you can get sucked right out the airplane. Well, it hit the ground. The wedding was back on again. And then when we got back to Yellowknife, I went over to Air Tindy and I said, "I want to know who the pilots were who flew that airplane." They told me. And so I called them up and I said, "Hey, I'm taking both you guys out. Best place in Yellowknife. All you can eat, all you can drink." And that's what we did. We had a party that night. But yeah, she wouldn't have gotten married without it.
So what you're saying, Cliff, is that if it wasn't for Canadians, Canadian canoeists and pilots, you would never have got married that day. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that day. Who knows? Maybe never. Who knows?
and before I go, the one other story that actually everybody would love is that we're on stage and we're talking about bear spray, and all these scouts, U.S. scouts, come in. Like there was like, I don't know, just over 100 of them coming into the audience, and we're still full already, right? And we're talking about bear spray, and I said, well, you can't really take bear spray into a bush plane in the north. It's illegal because it might explode and blind the pilot, and we go crashing. And your response to the whole audience is, well, Kevin, just don't tell the pilot you have some.
Would you just tie it on the strut? Or I mean, tape it on?
Yeah, that's what we ended up deciding, that you just duct tape it onto the pontoon.
Hide it in your Pringles potato chip container, right?
Yeah.
We never even did that. We didn't even worry about stuff like that.
No.
Remember just having it in your pack that goes on the airplane, and
how can you convince people that have never gone to the far north like you have right now, and they've done everything? They've done Algonquin, they've done Killarney in Ontario, but they want to do the far north. How can you convince them that it's worth the step up?
Oh, the Fond du Lac River, you mean? That's
any of those, yeah.
You know, that's an easy river. I mean, as Canadian rivers go, I would give it it's not a piece of cake, but I would probably give it maybe 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10 compared to some of the other ones. It's a lot of lake country. There's a lot of rapids in it, but there, except for the major falls, which is Manitou, okay, everything is pretty much canoeable. Yeah, you've got, I think if I remember right, there's only about 5 portages in the whole thing. There's Thompson Rapids, which it's runnable, but you're smart if you portage it, because it's a relatively easy portage around it. And Manitou, the rest of it's easy. But the really nice thing about the Fond du Lac, and I've done the Fond du Lac 4 times, I think. First of all, the campsites are phenomenal. They have these eskers that go for miles. You could put 100 tents on these things. Okay, and the sand beaches that go for miles. Great water clarity, superb fishing, not a lot of bugs, not a lot of rain. It's almost like a desert. Very, very pretty, and it's well within the. I think anybody, I would say, if you're an intermediate whitewater paddler, intermediate, okay, in a Canadian-style tripping canoe, not in a hot sport boat, okay? If you're an intermediate-style whitewater paddler, if you know how to back ferry and forward ferry, can turn right and left, you'll be fine. It's an easy river, but it's also one of my favorites because the climate is pretty nice, the campsites are wonderful, the fishing is great, and logistically it's pretty simple. It's a good step up. It's not at all like the bush rivers in Ontario. The bush rivers in Ontario are like tight, close, vegetation right up along the shore. There's no way you can basically line a canoe around something unless you're in the water, whereas it's much more open in northern Saskatchewan. You're real close to the Northwest Territories, so you're starting to get to a very, very, the trees are getting smaller and smaller as you go north.
The one book that you wrote, and I use it in my classes all the time. In fact, I use it today, actually. There's PineMartyn! Sorry, I got excited there for a reason. So the book that you did, and I used it all the time in my classes for leadership, and you said it didn't really sell really well, but it's Q&A, where so this is what happened, this is what should have happened, and this is what happened afterwards.
That went out of print with the first printing.
Really?
Oh yeah, I think I sold. I don't know. I think maybe we sold 500 copies of that, maybe total.
Really? I use that book all the time.
Well, I thought it was a good idea, but a lot of the funny thing is I look at all the. It's like, here's what my publisher said once. He says, Cliff, he says, the way it is in this business, he says, if I know I got to make money next year, he says, I'll ask you to write another not book. because knot books sell like mad. I don't know why people think they need all these freaking knots. I don't know why. You only need 3 or 4. What do you need all these other knots for? But for some reason or other, knot books are the big thing. And when I get my royalty check at the year, that little knot book, which took me 2 weeks to write, okay, has consistently made more money than Canoeing Wild Rivers every year. So it's, I don't know, it's the public with the public values, and there's not many people that do what we do, Kev. I mean, we're pretty hardcore. There's not many people who do hardcore stuff. They go to a national park here and they drive around and come back. They don't even get out of the car. That's what they do. Oh, okay. I've seen Rocky Mountain National Park. I drove around. Goodbye.
Oh my Lord! It's interesting times. And we'll get together for sure. And I've told this many times on podcasts with you, but I think my classic moment I would love to do with you is to paddle down the Boundary Waters and Quetico Basswood Lake, which is American and Canadian owned, and actually be in a canoe. Novacraft said they would make this canoe for me, and have one side with a American flag on it, and the other side the Canadian. And we will paddle across the middle and argue the shit out of everything.
So when they make that canoe,
That'd be good.
Which direction it's going, okay? And then, if Canada is on the left and the U.S. is on the right, be sure we have the American flag on the left and the Canadian flag on the right. I love you, man.
All right, I gotta go. I'm actually on a rock station in like 30 seconds. Okay, PineMartyn, good luck with you. You and don't talk about fishing with PineMartyn. He doesn't know.
Kevin, I'll announce Jess's show later on too. Thanks, Kevin. Have a good one, buddy. I knew that would be a treat. Martin, how you doing tonight?
I'm very well. Very well. How are you gentlemen doing?
Oh, you know what? Hey, look at this.
I know this. Okay, I have to jump in here right away. Cliff Jacobson, this is a big, big treat for me. I've been an admirer of yours for a long time, and I've had the pleasure of interacting and talking to a lot of people thanks to this this live stream that Dennis hosts for more than a year now. But I have always wanted to speak to you. I have learned so much from you and your books and your articles over the years. I'm a little starstruck right now, so if I ramble, forgive me. But and I need to thank you, not just for everything that you've given me in the way of knowledge, but you've taught me a couple of important lessons. The ground cloth is one of them. In fact, I have a YouTube channel and I have a YouTube video, which is probably my most controversial video, actually. It's about the great ground cloth controversy. Taking some heat from that. I learned a bunch of other lessons, including your emphasis on skills. You wrote a series of books. I think they were all called, subtitled something Basic Essentials. You had one Basic Essentials on camping, one on Basic Essentials canoeing, Basic Essentials map and compass. Your knot book I read. That's right. And I'm one of the ones that read the notebook. One of the many. They were all incredibly informative, and they really made me change my attitude about camping. I was very much focused on gear. I came to canoe tripping late in life. I was 30, and I was very focused on the importance of having the right gear and going to the right places and stuff. But I didn't have any skills, and I learned so much. I mean, I am very fussy about how I rig my tarp now. And I learned that from you and your books. And you did me a huge favor besides that. Years ago, when you were announcing the new edition of Canoeing Wild Rivers, which was coming out as Expedition Canoeing, it was the 20th anniversary, the one you were talking about earlier, that book was about to come out. You posted something about it on Canadian Canoe Routes. It's a forum online. And I contacted you and I said, Mr. Jacobson, I would love to read that book as soon as it comes out in print. Who's the publisher and all that? You responded immediately in a direct message saying, oh, what's your address? I'll mail you a copy. And you mailed me this free copy that I still have and still cherish all these years later. This has been my favorite canoeing book of all, and that includes, you know, classics like Path of the Paddle and stuff like that, in part because you gave it to me. But I mean, I was absolutely struck by your generosity, and I learned a ton from that book. So I'm not here with a question, but just to convey my thanks for everything that you've taught me over the years. I feel like I have upped my game in paddling, and especially in camping in the backcountry, thanks to you and your book. So I hope I'm not embarrassing you, but thank you.
What can I say? Thank you for the smile, and thank you for making my day. And the newer edition of this is quite a bit more book, though. I mean, the Canoeing Wild Rivers, the newer one, is a lot more book. It's even in color.
Yeah, this one is partially in color anyway. This one was partially in color.
Is there some color stuff in there?
Yeah, there was a number of pages that had color panels. I should show something though.
You know, it's interesting. One of the early editions, they had a color well in there, a little color well. If that has a color well in there,
yeah.
Oh yeah. You know what? You should check just for fun. I don't know what that book's worth, but if you see those old ones with the color wells, I've seen them selling on Amazon for $80-$90.
Oh, I'm not parting with this. Not for 80 or 90 bucks.
One of the older ones, but hey, I have to ask you a question now.
Sure.
I love your name. Is that really your name, PineMartyn?
No. In fact, Martin Pine isn't even my name. So I have a Facebook. We're friends on Facebook, and I'm known there as Martin Pine. But I chose that name. My name is Martin. It's Martin Pate, P-A-T-E. But I go by Martin Pine because I created a YouTube channel called PineMartyn. It was the PineMartyn, and everyone called me PineMartyn or Martin that way. And when I created a Facebook account that would sort of correspond to that YouTube channel, I just went Martin Pine. And
I love it, though. I just love
it. Well, good.
Martin, now everybody knows your real name. You're gonna get all your stalkers now.
That's okay. I'm not terribly worried.
Yeah, I love this stuff. This canoeing and camping, it's in my blood. I just hope I can keep doing it. I'm at the point now where I pretty much can't do these tough Canadian rivers with these mean portages. I can't do that anymore. But it's okay, you know. I'm doing other types of canoeing. If I hadn't started doing some of the U.S. rivers, I never would have learned about. Now I'm doing desert rivers, tropical rivers. I don't know anything about that, so I'm learning, and it's fun.
Right. Well, there's a whole generation of people who are benefiting from your experience, and if there are certain trips that you can't do anymore, then you've created a whole generation of people who will be undertaking those journeys. And I want to show something here. It's from your book. Can you sort of enlarge my
full screen you?
Yeah, full screen me. This is from the book, and
that's the wedding. That's
the wedding.
Oh yeah, that's Susie with the
wedding dress, and then there's one more.
Oh, that's the one with the toaster? No.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's the toaster. You're cutting the cake there.
Oh yeah, we're cutting the cake. I think the other one had the toaster. That was a kind of an interesting story. Right before Wilberforce Falls, there was a mining camp, and they wouldn't tell us what they were searching for, but we probably thought it was diamonds, maybe. Well, there was just two guys at this mining camp, and we told them that, there's going to be a wedding at the falls. And the wedding is going to be a day after tomorrow. You're invited. So we didn't think they'd come, but they did. They showed up, and they showed up with this box, okay, with a big red ribbon around it, opened it up, and it's a toaster. And the funny thing about it was just as we were opening this thing and pulling out the toaster, my friend Bob Danner was returning the trip from, I think it was maybe the Simpson River or something, I don't remember, but he's in a Twin Otter. Okay. And he knew that we were having this wedding. So he told the pilot, he says, can you buzz Wilberforce Falls and see if they're supposed to be having that wedding today? So he did. And the plane it banked over, and he was probably maybe 100 feet above the falls. Okay. Just as we undid the toaster, and then it took off. And then when I got back to Minnesota, Bob called me on the phone. He says, Cliff, he says, we saw it all. He said, we saw the wedding dress, we saw everything, you had a cake. He says, but was that really a toaster? They stole the toaster from the mining camp. It didn't work, but we got home, and one slice part worked, the other didn't. We just got it fixed, but now it just hangs on the mantle as a memory. But yeah, thanks. That was very kind of you to.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for all your kindness. One last thing. If anyone's looking for sort of the single book that's the most comprehensive on canoe tripping, it's going to be this book, or now under its other title, Canoeing Wild Rivers.
Yeah, it's a new one. Yeah.
Yeah, get your hands on that book. It's excellent. It's the one book you should have. Over any other.
Thanks so much for the kind words.
You're welcome. All right, thank you again.
Great to talk to you.
Thanks, Martin. Martin, you know where the green room is, okay?
Sure.
Okay. Cliff, I'm going to run through a few questions here, sort of like a little bit of a speed round.
Okay.
If you want to answer some questions here from people in the chat. There was one, I can't find it here, so I'll just ask you. One of our viewers, Brian J., was asking, have you ever camped or used a hammock for camping?
Have I ever used a hammock for camping? When I was a kid, I had a jungle hammock and used it all the time.
Yeah.
But no, I don't. And it's not a problem, but it is a problem. And the problem is you got to have trees to string it from. And even in places like the Boundary Waters and the Quetico, there's going to be campsites you're going to be in where you might have trees, but they might be 60 feet apart, and you can't hang this thing. So if you're for sure where you're camping, you can hang it, that's fine. Okay. Personally, I don't like sleeping in a hammock because I don't like sleeping like that. Okay. And the other thing is you got to have a fly over it, and then my issue with hammocks are, okay, say you get in camp and it rains for 2 days. You got a little tarp type thing, everything, but all your gear is underneath the hammock. So you got to get out of the hammock and deal with your gear, and it's raining. It's just, to me, it's just not like a tent and a tarp. I mean, you get in the tent, you're snug as a bug, nice and warm and whatever. You get up in the morning, it's miserable, raining, whatever, and you got this tarp. Now, Bill Mason and I kind of went back and forth. I don't know how many of you read Bill's book. It wasn't Path of the Paddle. Yeah, maybe either that or Song of the Paddle. I don't remember which one it was. And which he does some recommended reading books. He recommends Canoeing Wild Rivers. But then he's got this little addendum. And the addendum says, it's amazing how often Cliff and I agreed on all the important things. Quote, however, he's out to lunch on tents, unquote. Okay? Because Bill liked a big baker tent with a big open, okay? I don't like a big baker tent like that because it can blow down in high winds. I prefer a smaller tent that will withstand high winds, but a tarp to get under out of the rain. So in a sense, we're both in the same ballpark here. It's just that he wanted his tent and tarp combined, and I like mine two different. So ultimately, what happens with all this outdoor stuff, the serious outdoor stuff, I mean, where when you're going on a trip, if you screw up, they might be bringing you out in a body bag, or if you mess up, your canoe will be coming out in parts in a suitcase. Everybody who does these trips, who is good at it, pretty much does them the same way. Sure, we all have our little nuances of how we want to pack and nuances about food and so forth, but the really important things we all agree on. And what we're just looking at little minor things, because what ultimately happens is, it's like you say, if you're a race car driver and you're going to go fast down the road, there are certain ways you have to do it or you're going to crash and burn. Okay. If you're not going that fast, you can do things a lot of different ways. In other words, if your trips are strictly in the boundary waters, Quetico Provincial Park, total flat water, you can do that for 20 years and you'll be as good as it gets in those areas. But if you decide one day you want to do one of the northern rivers in Canada that go to Hudson Bay or James Bay or High Arctic, and you don't have the whitewater experience and the experience with the winds that can be 50, 60 miles an hour, you're going to crash and burn. So you need, I guess, versatility is what I'm suggesting here.
Cool. Okay, another question here from Chris Pro. She's asking, always a pleasure to hear you talk about paddling. What's your favorite paddling story?
Well, my favorite paddling story obviously would be the wedding. I mean, that was magical. It was magical for another reason. It was really unusual. I lost my wife, Sharon, when she was 50. She died of an asthma attack. And then I met Susie 2 years later. And the wedding story is in Canoeing Wild Rivers. But there's a part of it that you don't want to gloss over. There's a part of it in there where we're getting ready to go for the wedding. And Susie's getting dressed and she's putting her wedding dress on. And the black flies are so bad that she's dressing under a full body net called a Susie bug net. You can make one that tells you how to do that in the book, or you can buy one, whatever. But anyway, we're wondering if this thing is going to go off okay, or we're going to be shut down by the black flies. All right, so the wedding's at 2:00. So we're walking up to this high point. Okay, this is about 1:30, getting ready for the wedding. And as soon as we get to the high point where the wedding was supposed to begin, two things happen. One, there's a raven sitting on a rock right there. Now, ravens are black, and I know most North Americans have this thing that, blackbirds are bad guys, white bird is a good bird. No, the raven is in Inuit theology, if you will. If a raven comes to your party, you are very, very lucky because you've been honored. Okay? So first of all, there's raven is there, and he looks at us, and then he takes off. He had no reason for landing. There's no food, there's no water, there's nothing. Okay. And then what happens is all of a sudden the bugs disappear. It was so instantaneous. It was like everybody's commenting. And I said, no, you guys, they haven't disappeared. They're down here in the tundra. Watch. So I take my foot and I stomp on the tundra. I said, watch, big clouds of them will come up. Nothing. I said, all right, I'll show you. I'm going to lay down in the tundra. So I lay down in the tundra. No bugs. Now, there were no bugs. The wedding went on till about maybe 1:00 in the morning. You know, you're above the Arctic Circle here, so it really doesn't get real dark. Okay, so it's gray. Okay, so now we're walking back. It's probably 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and we decided we were going to go. We were all hot and sweaty, so Susie and I decided we were going to go skinny dipping in a tundra pond. Now, first of all, you don't swim in tundra ponds. What's in there is going to eat you alive. The bugs will just carry up. No bugs. Okay, so we get out of the tundra pond, we wipe off, and then we go back to the tents. Still, no bugs. And then the Cannondale Aroostook, which is the tents we had 2 great big 6-foot vestibules on each end. So I'm picked up Susie and I'm carrying her over the vestibule. So as soon as I carry her over the vestibule and set her down, bang, the bugs are back. Just like that, everywhere.
The vestibule.
Now, I'm not making this up. This is exactly how it happened. So I would say that's a pretty cool canoeing story.
That's awesome. No bugs. People like no bugs. Okay, so we got one more person here that just popped into the basement. Nate Muskoka. How you doing, Nate?
Oh, hey. Good, thank you. How are you two?
Oh,
Hi, Nate.
Good.
I'll say it again. I'm okay. You got a question for Cliff?
I hear you. Yeah, I probably thought of 100 in the last hour. But yeah, it's this is quite the special show. And it's
Can you
really
talk
hard.
a little louder, Nate, or something,
Oh.
or get a little closer to the mic? Thanks.
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah, that's better. Thanks.
Okay, sorry. It's PineMartyn is a hard act to follow, but I'll try to I'll try to keep it brief. Newer fan, I listened to a really interesting interview you had with Paul Kirtley, in which you did a podcast. And I think it went for almost 2 hours, but I could have listened to even more. It was fantastic. And I know that we're very much a paddling oriented group on here on Dennis's show, but we also delve into some, bushcrafty type stuff now and then. But you had some really interesting, the theme of the podcast was skills are more important than gear. And you had a couple of really interesting things to say about knives and also axes, I believe. Is there anything brief you could, well, not brief, but you're more than welcome to obviously expound on that for as long as you like, but what were your kind of most important takeaways from that in your discussion with him about canoeists taking knives and axes and what you use?
Well, I would say, first of all, Paul is a lot more of an expert with knife and axe stuff than I would ever be. And I mean, Paul's a real deal. If you want some pretty good, my whole take on the knife axe thing, if you go on my website, which is cliffcanoe.com, cliffcanoe, all one word.com, and I do blogs. There's a bunch of blogs on there. Just go into the blog thing and hit the little question mark and type in knife. And there's a couple of them on there. One is entitled "Are Big Blades Best for the Bush?" And I think another one is how to sharpen them and so forth. But when you cut through all this stuff, you have to ask yourself, what do you use a knife for? We're not, I mean, on a wilderness trip, we're not cleaning buffalo anymore, and we're not using knives for self-protection against Indians like they did 200 years ago. So big knives are just awkward. I mean, try. I guess my thing is, try a thin slice of salami with a knife and see how it does. And if it doesn't do a good job, it's going to be a lousy camp knife. Now we're not talking hunting knives. A hunting knife is maybe something different, but I'm not even sure that it is, because I notice that like American hunters buy these big thick bladed knives, all the time. And so a few years ago, my wife and I, we took a class. We live in River Falls, Wisconsin. We have a college here, and the guy who was the director of meat science put on a show for us, and it was entitled "How to Butcher an Animal." And they killed a sheep, and he butchered the whole sheep out literally within 30 minutes. He had the whole sheep taken apart. And what he had was a very thin bladed, sharp knife with a blade this long. And that's it. That's the only tool he used on the whole sheep. And so I thought I'd bait him a little bit. And I'd say something like, excuse me, Prof, I have a question. How come hunters think they need these big, heavy, thick-bladed knives all the time? These big honkers. I said, the Indians used obsidian, glass knives, and they slaughtered buffalo with them. Why? So he looked at me and he smiled and he says, 2 reasons. 1, those obsidian knives were sharp. Number 2, unlike most hunters, they knew what they were doing. Okay, so I guess that sort of tells all. What do I carry on my trip? I carry a knife with a 4.5 inch carbon steel blade, very thin blade. It's about a 1/16 of an inch thick, full tang. Okay, and it's thin enough to do a good job filleting a fish. And people, those are too thin. You know what? I can take a 3-inch diameter chunk of wood, put it on the top, and hammer it through with a chunk of wood, and it ain't gonna break. In fact, one of the things I do when I do some of these seminar things, I have an old-fashioned paring knife. Those, the old carbon steel ones. And I use that and I split chunks of wood about 2 inches in diameter with it. If you're breaking a knife blade, you're abusing it. It's as simple as that. You don't need a thick blade. The thinner the blade, the better it's going to slice. It's going to be better for spreading stuff. So that's my primary knife. And as far as an axe is concerned, most of the time I carry a grounds force hand axe. Okay. Sometimes I carry the little teeny midget one that only weighs 10 ounces. Sometimes I carry the one that weighs 1.5 pounds. If I go to Canada, if I go to Ontario, where I know I'm going to have to do portages, then I go with a three-quarter Hudson Bay style axe and 2 full frame folding saws, because we've had to really open up for. And that's the other thing. You see people who say, like, leave your axe at home and say, this goes back to the same thing we talked about with the race car guy driving with the Buick guy. These guys, they go to the Boundary Waters every year or whatever, and I don't need an axe. Of course you don't need an axe, because the federal authorities have cleared all your portages for you. Okay, they've cleared out all your camps for you. If there's leaning trees over your campsite, they've taken it down. Go to Ontario and see what happens. Okay, so the point is they haven't had the experiences that you've had, so they think you're a nutcase because it's worked for them for all these years. It's worked for them because they've never pushed the envelope. It's as simple as that. So I don't know. I guess that's and the irony is I like carbon steel. I know it rusts, but so does a gun. It rusts too.
Yeah.
An axe rusts too.
Just gotta oil your knife. That's all. Yeah.
I like
carry oil with me, so.
because you can sharpen it very quickly to a razor edge. You give the typical person a stainless steel knife, and they won't get it sharp. Go into anybody's kitchen and look at these expensive rust-off knives they have. They're really expensive, and they're all duller than hell because they don't know how to sharpen them. And in order to sharpen them, you've got to know what you're doing, because that's really some tough steel. So it is what it is. So I hope I answered your question.
No, you absolutely did, and I think someone in the chat just kind of joked that Dennis needs to extend the show by an hour tonight, because I don't know if another hour would even be enough, but this is fantastic. So thank you.
Well, we've been known to go into overtime. If people are around, they want to hear some more stories and tidbits of advice from Cliff, I have no problem bring them that for sure. Yeah.
I think I have another one. It was more of a follow up, and I sort of know the answer because of reading some of your stuff and the Paul Kirtley podcast. But I think before you had made your position known on hanging barrels and hanging food, but there were some follow-up questions in the chat just about then, if your take on it is to not do that, then what do you do, or what would you suggest in those other situations?
Oh, you mean for food and camp for bears?
Yeah, food storage.
Well, I can tell you what I will tell people, and then I can tell you what I do.
Do as I say, not as I do.
What I tell people in places like the Boundary Waters or the Quetico, where those campsites are occupied pretty much every night, okay? Bears, not just bears, every other little animal that wants food knows about those places, okay? And in the case of bears, you put your food up in a tree, even if it meets the specs of the Forest Service or Ministry of Natural, whatever, doesn't matter. They'll get it down. They know how to get it down. Okay, but the feds don't care about that because they get the food, they won't get you. Okay, all right. So what I tell people in those places is just make sure you don't have odor in your food. You pack the way I recommend in my books, you won't. And then at night, take your food out of camp and hide it under a tree. Period. Now, what will happen is the bear will come into camp and wander around, and he'll go to all the places. First, he's going to go over to the John. Okay, maybe you threw some food down that. Nope. If there's a picnic table, they check on top of that, under that. Okay, then they're going to meticulously go around the campsite and see if there's anything on the campsite. If he can't smell your food or see your food, he won't get your food. They see well. Okay. So if a bear has had an experience where he's got food out of a pack, He sees a pack on the ground, he's going to take it apart, even if it only has sleeping bags in it. And he's going to keep taking it apart until that operant conditioning behavior has been removed. In other words, he gets enough negatives that he won't do that anymore. Or if he found one time he was on a run in a dump and he found food in a partially of a tin can, he'll bite through a tin can. And so it goes. Okay. So that's what I tell people in those populated places. Now, if I'm going on a trip in a remote part of your country, then you know what? I'm not sticking my food out. Okay? My food is going to be where I can see it and where I can deal with it. And if you get in some of these northern trips and an animal gets your food, you're in trouble. Now with things like satellite phones and spots and whatever, okay, you got some options. But you know what? Most of the trips I did was way before that. That bear wipes me out, I'm in trouble. So you know what? Sorry, but there are places where I'm carrying a rifle. And if that bear, and I've been a few times, I've never had to shoot a bear. But he was informed that I was about ready to. Okay, so there are, if you're doing trips to Hudson Bay, you're doing trips above the Arctic Circle where you have polar bears, you're wise to go armed. That is, if you know how to shoot. And if you don't, then you better leave the gun at home and hope that your pepper spray works and the wind's not blowing into your face when you fire it off. Okay, so, but basically, the difference between doing a trip like in northern Canada and doing one like in the Boundary Waters Quetico is the Boundary Waters Quetico, yes, they're beautiful and it's wonderful and say all sorts of good things, but it's still it's a park, okay, that sees a lot of people. And there's a lot of people that aren't very careful with their stuff. Okay, so the best thing to do is get the pack out of camp. Bear won't find it. Now, some people, I said, oh, I put mine in a canoe and I run the canoe out in the water and tie it off to a tree. Oh, that's a real brilliant thing to do. Night comes along, big wind comes up, blows the canoe upside down. And where are bears going to walk? They're going to pretty much walk along the shoreline anyway. That's where they're finding that's where they find food, dead stuff and stuff. And they're going to come right on top of your canoe. So, there's a lot of advice that goes back 100 years. In the old days when tents were big Baker tents, they used to say, leave your tent flaps open. That way a bear can walk in and take a look around, seeing nothing can leave. Well, you don't leave tent flaps open today. You're going to have a million bugs in your tent. So that's advice that was from 100 years ago. And I would say that if you're just careful, if you just pack where there's no odor, hide the pack, take it out in the woods, hide it, so he can't see it or smell it, he won't get it. But you got to realize there's a lot of stupid people. I got to end with the story just to show you the complete left side of the normal curve, intelligence-wise. Okay, I'm at Canoecopia. This is the biggest show in North America. Like, we had 500 people in the audience. And somebody raises his hand and says, Cliff, you said take the food out of camp and hide it in the bush. Quote, where does camp end? Where does camp end? That says all. So if you're a federal authority, you got to address that. Where does camp end? Oh. So, unfortunately, none of this is rocket science. People think that, if I do this, I do that, well, I'll never have a bear problem. I'll never get hurt out there. No, it's not like that. It's chances are you won't. This is the smartest alternative, but you still can. So be prepared. Great question. Glad you brought it up. Thank you.
Hey, Cliff, I got to throw a couple questions at you here that are in the chat. I'm going to pop two up, and they're both kind of related, and maybe you could touch on them. Don't go away, Nate. Brian J. was asking, Cliff has a fry pan handle design in one of his books. Can he explain more about that? And then also we had a question from Stephen Coots, Canoe Polar. Can you tell us about your Angel Food cake pan baking system?
Cool. I'm supposed to tell you about?
Yeah. Is that something you could touch on?
Some of this is pretty old. Let's go back to the first one, the handle thing. Actually, There was a company years ago that made a aluminum Dutch oven. It was a 2-piece Dutch oven. If I'd have known this question was going to be asked, I could have it up here and show. And it had a spring wire handle on it. Spring wire that clipped into just a little thing on the side of the pan. You could take it, you could kill a bear with the thing. The handle wouldn't come off, yet you could squeeze it together and take it apart. I thought it was ingenious. So what I did was, I have a friend who has a machine shop. He just duplicated, just to have very heavy, thick wire that's bent a certain way. If you look in my book, Basic Illustrated Cooking, it shows, if you can still find the book, it's out of print, but it shows a picture of it. There might be in Camping's Top Secrets, might be in there too. I'm not sure. Okay, so he made me a bunch of these, and then along with a little thing that just screws into the pan. So once every couple of years, I go to a discount store, I buy a good skillet. I don't like these camping skillets. I don't like any of them. A good 12-inch skillet, and then I screw that thing on the back with a brass bolts, and I use this handle system. And it's such a simple handle system that I don't know why some manufacturer hasn't gobbed onto it. And so I liked it so well that I had, there was a company called Chosen Valley Canoe Works that made yokes. The guy's an engineer. And I said, why don't you make some of these up? Like put 3 of them together with some bolts and stuff, sell them for $5 or $10 or whatever, as a thing that you can convert any pan or pot. He tried it, but nobody would buy it. So sometimes good ideas and good products just, they just die. So that's that one. The other question that you asked about the angel, was it an angel food baking thing? Well, what I do is that goes back a long. I don't do that system anymore, but that goes back a long ways too. You can make a Dutch oven out of any set of skillets, and you can bake that way. What I did in the early days, I got a hold of a couple of Jello mold ovens. You remember those aluminum Jello mold rings that your grandmother used to have? Okay, yeah. So what you do is you take this Jello mold ring and you set it on your stove, and you turn the stove down really low, and then you put your baked stuff in the ring on the Jello mold. Okay, then you put a cover on it. Well, the heat goes up through the hole, bounces off the inside of the lid, and cooks the bread or whatever you have on the outside. And now to make it cook more evenly, if you get one of these, I don't know what they call it, but it goes underneath the burner of an electric stove. It's like a metal type dish type thing that goes under the burner, I think, of an electric, I think of the old electric stoves, stamped steel thing. You can buy them in.
Oh, okay, yeah, like a tray thing, yeah.
And that almost cooks the bottom of the Jello mold, and it keeps the bottom of the Jello mold from burning. And then you can take a Sierra cup, and you can put water in the Sierra cup. You can put that in the center of the ring, the Jello ring, and say you wanted to rehydrate some apples or something like that with minimal amount of water. You just put the dehydrated apples around here, put a cover on. Okay, so the water in the Sierra cup boils, comes down and rehydrates the apples. So there was a lot of things you could do with it. I quit doing that years ago, but that's just a way of, because I don't want to carry a dedicated oven. I want to try to keep my weight and bulk as light as I can get it. And there's an old saying in the canoeing business, everything you bring on a trip should have at least 2 functions. So there you have it.
Yeah, cool.
Fun question, thanks.
Yeah, for sure. I wasn't even aware of those things, so it's good to hear. Nate, did you have anything else for Cliff?
A couple more, but I think one fun one that I kind of thought of, and this is listening to, after Paul Kirtley, listening to a few interactions that Cliff has had with Kevin.
Yeah, I missed the question.
Oh, sorry. It's one I thought of after listening to your and Paul's conversation and doing some reading, and then actually watching some interactions you've had with our friend Kevin. Is if you and Kevin were sent to purgatory and you could only debate one thing till the end of time, and it was your choice, what would that debate be?
That's a Kevin Callan kind of question if I ever heard one.
Well, I would probably debate something with Callan that I know we could agree on, and that is good scotch.
That's a good
No,
answer.
actually, Kevin and I agree on it on most things. Okay, we do a few things a little differently. We do things like he does things more ethnic Canadian. I do things a little bit more ethnic American, but it doesn't matter because in the total scheme of things, these are minor things. It doesn't matter. It's a sport. It's just a fun way, pretty much. You know.
Good, good, good
Like
answer. I like
Kevin
that.
doesn't
And
mind wet feet.
one more.
He doesn't mind wet feet. I don't like to get my feet wet, so I wear boots. You know.
Yeah.
But I actually admire him for that because I wish I had the composure, the fortitude to just go around with wet feet all the time, but I just don't. So yeah.
Understandable. One last question. If you if you had to pick, what's been your favorite Ontario canoe trip?
My favorite Ontario canoe trip. It's not the longest. It's not the most remote. Kopka River. You know where it is?
I know where it is, but I have not been.
You access it out of Armstrong, Ontario. There's a number of ways you can access it. You can actually take the train across and get off the train if they're still doing that. You can fly into a lake and access it that way. It's a real short flying. But the Kopka has something like 25 waterfalls, okay? And some of these are major killers. It doesn't belong in Ontario. It's like it's misplaced. It should be in British Columbia. It goes in through what I call the land of the lost. You go down. There's 3 drops of falls. Double drop. Two drops of falls, and in between each places, camping places at each part. And in order to get your canoe down there, you actually have to lower it on a climbing rope, about 75 feet. It's not a straight down drop, but it's about I would say it's a 30, 40 degree drop for 75 feet. So you have to drop this stuff down on a climbing rope. And it's not far away. It's from Minneapolis. It's just a day's drive to Armstrong. But if I would say that's a trip. It's a wonderful canoe trip. Again, the whole thing with Ontario rivers are you can't be a flat water paddler and do these trips. You've got to understand moving water. You've got to be able to paddle rapids, and you've got to have a canoe that's capable of canoeing rapids. And the ones that you see in Quetico and the Boundary Waters, you'd be bringing back in a suitcase in some of these rivers. So I guess that's which is really another major point. This is a little off the subject, but one of the problems that I think we have is that people wants to take a class and they want to learn how to do this. You don't want to just call your local whitewater sport area because they're going to put you in a little 10-foot playboat. That's not what you want. What you want, you say, I want to learn Canadian style open canoeing in rapids. I want to be in a 17-foot tripping boat. So teach me the back ferry. Teach me the forward ferry. Teach me eddy turns and peel outs using that boat. And some of these guys who are just hot shot whitewater junkies, they roll their eyes. They think, oh, they're real experts. You know, I've had some of those on canoe trips, and technically they're very good. But then you put them in this big canoe. It's like they've been driving a Mazda Miata for years, and now they're trying to drive a semi-truck. It's different. So, again, I'm sorry I get off the subject.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you very much, Cliff.
Well, thanks for weighing in. Thanks, Nate.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Nate. You know where the green room is, right? Okay. I'm going to drop you down for now. We'll see you in the green room in a few minutes. Anyways, Cliff, we are at like 10 after 9. it's been a great run. I don't know what your time constraint is, but we'll probably wrap up the show for tonight. But you know what? There's so much more we could probably touch on that. I'd love to have you on a future show.
I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, and you were all worried about your internet connection tonight. You know what? Yours is probably better than mine is.
Oh, well, you know what? This is an AT&T repeater antenna.
Okay.
What it is. That's all it is. Fortunately, I only live a mile from the antenna, so if I don't have anything else running, it works okay.
Great. Good stuff. Okay. Yeah. Anything you want to add in closing?
Well, I want to thank you for having me on the show, and I want to thank the audience and thank you for all the fun questions that were asked. It's been a pleasure, and in my next life, guys, I'm coming back Canadian.
There you right there, Canada. Wrong side over here, right? Good stuff. You know what? Really, thank you for spending your Tuesday evening with us. It was fairly short notice, like a week's notice to get a hold of you, but I knew you'd be a great guest on the show, and it's I've been waiting for this one, so I'm very happy to have had you on the show. Man, you clear up. You got a lot of great reasoning when it comes to backcountry camping and paddling. So thanks for sharing that knowledge with us.
Thanks for having me, and that's to all you guys.
Awesome. Okay, Cliff, I'm just going to put you into the green room. I'll be with you in a few moments. We got a few people down there that probably want to ask you a few more questions if that's cool with you. So we'll go on with that. And we'll see you in a few minutes. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this show. Like I say, I just like PineMartyn there, I was a little bit awestruck to have Cliff Jacobson on the show here. It's the guy knows this stuff, wealth of knowledge. If you happen to be able to pick up any of his books, do, because you know what, they're very informative. A lot of great information to be gained from that. I'm definitely going to be checking out this new book that he has out. I forget the name of it there. Sorry, just a brain fart going on. But yeah, definitely going to be checking that out myself. Just to let a lot of you know, next week, I believe the show topic is going to be on family camping and breaking children into wilderness and canoe camping. So follow me on Facebook at CanoeHounds Outdoor Adventure Show, and I will put an update on that there to make sure everything's going to be going smooth with that. So let the cat out of the bag early. I don't usually like to do that, but if you know anybody that's looking at getting children into the backcountry, when we're allowed to here in Ontario, but elsewhere as well, you'll want to make sure you tune into that show next week. So once again, tonight's swag giveaway question was, how many books or titles has Cliff published to date? And if you do have an answer to that, you can send it to coasprize@gmail.com. That's coasprize@gmail.com. I'll just shoot that across the bottom of the screen. If you like tonight's show, please do hit that thumbs up. It really, really helps us with the YouTube algorithm and helps us get noticed. If you're new to the show and you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button. We have great shows every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We would love to have you tune in and watch the show. And our shows are always interactive. And I love to see more people come up on screen and ask questions. Our guests really do like it when you actually pop up and ask questions. They don't have to constantly look at this mug. They get to look at somebody new, and you're the ones that have the questions. Please do join us. It's always a good time. Let's see. Anything else in closing? I think that is probably about it. Anyways, everybody, we'll see you next week. Please stay safe, stay healthy, get out there, enjoy the great outdoors if you can and when you can. And remember, keep the adventures alive. Have a great one.